guys ever found yourself just searching for a read aloud to do with your class? Something that they'd be interested in, something that maybe teaches a good lesson, something that will instill a love of reading to these kids. I know I've definitely been in that situation before, searching on the internet, looking through my libraries, trying to find something that maybe these kids haven't read before, but they might enjoy. Well, if you found yourself in that kind of a situation, I think you should try pretty much any book by Roald Dahl. Most people, when I mention that name, have no idea who that is. They've never heard of that man before. But when I mention some of the movies that have been made because of his books, or based on his books, that starts to ring a bell for these people. I'm sure most people have heard of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Matilda, maybe even Fantastic Mr. Fox, or even the BFG, which is his newest movie. Most people will recognize these or have seen them, but they probably didn't realize that it came from a book. And those books were wrote by Roald Dahl. Now, Roald Dahl books have so many features that make them great books, or I think they do. He always has some kinds of chills and suspense, a little bit of spookiness in his books. Kids love to be spooked a little bit. Nothing too scary, but a little spook, a little darkness in there kind of makes the kids enjoy it a little better, I think. His books always have some form of magic. Kids love magic. How many of us, when we were little, didn't try a magic potion or try to see if we could find a twig and turn it into a magic wand? You know we did. Kids love magic. They always have a little bit of whimsy and fairy tale features to it, sort of. He has tons of zany humor. You never know what's going to happen to these characters. He has a lot of the rude body humor, that kids love. They think those kinds of things are hilarious. He doesn't hold back from any of that. The kids love that. But I think one of the the best things about his books are that they always feature a downtrodden child as his protagonist. And they're always triumphing over atrocious adults. If we think back to when we were kids, and we try to imagine who our enemy was back then, it's probably always going to be an adult. It was our mom and dad not letting us do what we wanted, a grandparent, a teacher, or a principal who punished us for something. They were the enemies to us. Kids, the adults are the enemies. And books that let them be the hero over these adults, especially when these adults are being so awful and evil, and it gives the kids a sense of good trumping evil. It makes the kids feel empowered that they can do these things, they can change the world. So I love that about his books. I think that's the best thing about his books, that it gives children empowerment. All right, so what's really kind of neat about Mr. Dahl is he never planned to be a children's book author. His first published work was he was in the Royal Air Force during World War II, and his plane crashed, and he actually ended up getting invalid. I think that's that word. He got discharged because he was injured. There we go. And he got actually sent to America to kind of promote the war. That was his new job since he couldn't fly anymore. And while there, he met a famous author, C.S. Forester. And Mr. Forster thought that his stories sounded so amazing and entertaining that he wanted to write about them. So he asked Mr. Dahl to write some notes about his adventures. And instead, he actually just wrote a whole story, Roald did. And C.S. Forster liked it so much that he actually put it in the Saturday Evening Post, and that was his first published work. After that, he wrote several adult novels. They were moderately successful. He didn't find a lot of success with those. Most of them were kind of a little dark and suspenseful. A lot of the things that he includes in his children's books, but they just weren't as successful as his children's books. He credits his success as a children's book author to his own children. A quote from him says, "Had I not had children of my own, I would have never written books for children, nor would I have been capable of doing so." He himself phrased the term Sparky Dad. He wanted to be a Sparky Dad. That means like he wanted to be the best dad he could, try to make his children's lives fun and magical as he could. And he incorporated a lot of that into his books. almost all of his children's books started as bedtime stories to his kids. His very first book, James and the Giant Peach, started as a story to his 2 daughters. So he read it to those. They sounded like good stories, and he turned them into books. Now I'm going to take just a second to talk a little bit about the most famous, or I think it's my favorite book from him. It's also not as well known. Most people have heard about Matilda or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because of the movies. But George's Marvelous Medicine is a little less well known. George's Marvelous Medicine, of course, is about a boy named George, and he has a grandmother. Now, most grandmothers in fiction, wonderful, kindly old ladies, but not George's grandmother. So he decides that he needs to do something about this grandmother of his. I'm going to read you a little tidbit of the book here. Oops, there we go. Alright, so magic medicine it shall be. George set himself down at the table in the kitchen. He was shaking a little. Oh, how he hated Grandma. He really hated that horrid old witchy woman. And all of a sudden, he had a tremendous urge to do something about her. Something whopping. Something absolutely terrific. A real shocker. A sort of explosion. I'm not going to be frightened by her, he said softly to himself. But he was frightened. And that's why he wanted suddenly to explode her away. Well, not quite away, but he did want to shake the old woman up a bit. Very well then, what should it be? This whopping, terrific, exploding shocker for Grandma. As George sat there pondering this interesting problem, his eye fell upon the bottle of Grandma's brown medicine standing on the sideboard. Rotten stuff it seemed to be, and it didn't do her the slightest bit of good. She was always just as horrid after she'd had it as she'd been before. So, thought George suddenly, I shall make her a new medicine. One that is so strong and so fierce and so fantastic it will either cure her completely or blow off the top of her head. Here we go then, cried George, jumping up from the table. A magic medicine it shall be. Does it sound like something your class would enjoy? Yeah, kids love those kinds of stories. They cannot wait to see what's going to happen to Grandma. I usually read this story usually within the first few weeks of my class every year, and they adore it. And then when they find out that he also wrote Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it gets them interested in some of his other books. So I hope that you got some interest in his books, and while you're looking for your next read aloud or your next book maybe just to take to the beach, check out some Roald Dahl.